Hello, and welcome to my AGDQ 2020 submission with Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes running on Extreme, going for a Merrill-based ending, running on PC Emulator using Dolphin version 5.0 as per, the MGS1 requirements for the Speedruns.com leaderboards. I'm very honored to do this run today. I hope you take this run into consideration during your review these next couple of weeks. And, I will get started right now. So I'm going to be running on Extreme, no radar, game over if discovered, which are all conditions required to go for Big Boss for best case scenario. So I'll be starting with a run estimate of 1 hour and 7 minutes. For a Merrill-based ending, it's my worst case scenario time. Best case scenario is between, 103, 104, depending on how things go. So I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so like I said, my name is Joseph Joestar316. I run, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, along with Metal Gear Solid 1 through 4, all on highest difficulties with the exception of MGS1. But today, on Twin Snakes, we will be going for Big Boss on the highest difficulty. So right now, as I crawl through that pipe, I'm going to hang out in this locker for 2 minutes waiting for an elevator. Because the difference between the original game and this Twin Snakes is that Twin Snakes is a remake of the original, but with some additions in places, such as this locker that I'm standing in. Because in the original game, there was no locker. So therefore, for simplicity, it's easier to hide from these guards while waiting for an elevator to come down from the elevator shaft. Which also keeps me undetected while these guards, as you can see, he's kind of going about his duty, patrolling around. They don't even know I'm here. Also, key differences between the original game and the emulator is that Twin Snakes was made with the core engine of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty in graphics and aiming control. So essentially, this is MGS2 controls and graphics, but with the story and character model of Metal Gear Solid 1. It's a rather unique game, despite some differences between the two. But once I get to Disc 2 later, I'll explain why this is an actual why it's a faster run than the original game due to a shortcut to changing the PAL cards once we get to the Rex hangar later in the game. So right now, the elevator's gonna come down, and it's conveniently timed where I could just spam to get out of this locker, and then literally just run right past this guard, doesn't even know I'm here, and then away I go. So it's pretty simple. You just wait in the locker for 2 minutes, get the cutscene, spam to get out, and then just run right to the elevator. The peripheral vision is pretty hilarious at times with, how guards don't see you at certain points of the game. Alright, so now my main objective here is to cross this helipad, filled with patrols, while avoiding some spotlights to get a stun grenade in a locker coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trick this guard into seeing me, go past this spotlight, ever so slightly stay on the rails, and then boom, walk right on past him. Alright, go past the camera, and then here's the stun grenade that I'm going to need for quite a bit of the run. And then we got this guard by this vent, trick him into seeing me, walk on by, past this camera, and then right into the vent. And as you can see, it looks like I'm endlessly spamming my stun grenade by equipping and unequipping it. Now, it may look silly, but in actuality, by doing this, it allows you to move faster in the vent due to an animation skip for crawling. And it increases your movement speed quite significantly as opposed to normal crawling. So all you do is you just keep this rhythm with your stun grenade until you get to the end. Once we get to the tank hangar. You know, and so when in doubt, just follow the rats. You know, the rats are friendly. They lead you to safety. You know, they don't really mind that I'm here. But the genome soldiers, on the other hand, they don't like me being here. So we don't want to really make contact with them if we can avoid it. Alright, so here I am at the tank hangar. So we're gonna wait right here around this corner for this guard to get here. Once he turns, I'm gonna run ever so carefully up behind him. And then once rolling into him, go right to the elevator. Now, I conveniently got a fast elevator, which a fast elevator in this game is anything that takes, you know, 2 clicks or 2 presses to have your elevator show up. More commonly, it takes 3 to 4 presses, which is a normal elevator, but every once in a while, you will get a fast elevator, which is purely RNG. You know, which just simply means that it's random. You know, some situations you may get a fast elevator in the same spot, and then on your next run, it's a normal elevator. It's, you know, you can hope for them, but they're not always consistent. But if you do get them, it does save you about a second and a half or so. And then once again, you know, now we're in the cell block, trying to make our way to the DARPA chief. And at the same time, you can see I'm once again using this stun grenade manipulation of equipping, unequipping, again, to optimize my movement speed. You know, the same way that I entered the vent from the beginning of the game. Alright, so now all of a sudden, the DARPA chief's dead. Everyone's freaking out. Snake's wondering what's going on. And then in the midst of this confusion, you know, our cellmate across the way, Meryl, has attracted Johnny's attention, the guard. You know, and after kind of beating him up, roughing him up a bit, takes his uniform. And then in the meantime, we're just kind of chilling, you know, waiting to get out, you know, for Meryl to let us out. Alright, so now begins the first encounter, a staged encounter, which is the cell rush. You know, so we break out. Meryl's, you know, gonna assist me after these first 3 guards. You know, just get a couple quick headshots, run off to the slacker, grab some ammo that I'm gonna need for later.
What are you waiting for? Shoot!
Don't talk to me like a rookie.
I'm telling you, shoot!
Alright, so now at this point of the encounter, Meryl's now going to be firing at these genomes that she wasn't doing previously. Her assistance is somewhat consistent as compared to the original game, where she rarely fires at the soldiers, but in this game, she's a little more on the aggressive side, which is beneficial to us, you know, as the speedrunner. But in the meantime, I'm just standing on this corner, shooting these guards as they come in, you know, to help speed up the encounter. You know, so after these 6 guards go down, we're gonna get one more, which is a staged encounter with a grenade toss, but you could just end that early by shooting them. And now for the last 2 guards here, I'm gonna shoot one, and then for the other, just kind of beat him up a bit, which will make him vulnerable to Meryl's gunfire sooner. Alright, so that was a pretty decent cell rush encounter. You know, because like I said, Meryl's assistance in the beginning is somewhat hectic, but towards the end, it can be manipulated in your favor, pending you position the genome soldier in the right place. Alright, so now from here, we go down to the second, you know, the second level, which is B2. Which we're now going into the armory. Because now, after meeting up with Meryl, she gives us a key card, along with, or actually no, it was with the DARPA chief actually giving us the key card, but as well as intelligence that, you know, President Baker is also down in B2, which can provide more information about, you know, Shadow Moses, you know, the Rex project, as well as a critical item, which is the PAL key, which is, up until this point, believed to be used for arming the nuclear missile that the terrorists have in their possession. But unfortunately, President Baker is kind of in a secluded spot, so we have to blow up these walls to get to him. You know, thankfully the walls are easily distinguishable by not being fully painted over, so they're really easy to tell apart from normal walls. Alright, so now comes the first boss encounter, which is rather the quickest encounter in this game. So all you do simply is just you stand in this corner and just shoot Ocelot in the head. You know, so we get one more. And just like that, if you blinked, you just missed this fight with Ocelot. Because unlike the original game, it was kind of an oversight that you would just aim in first person without having to move. You know, it's like the AI gets stuck on what to do when you as the player, you know, hold a corner. You know, unlike the original game where you're chasing Ocelot in circles, or if you're going for a speed run, you would optimize it with some ever carefully tossed grenades. But in this game, you don't have to do any of that. You just simply stand at that corner, aim right in his head for 3 times, and just like that, that fight's over before you know it. Alright, so now after calling Meryl, based on, again, the intelligence I got from President Baker, we're gonna meet up with her pretty soon, which is now gonna put me on a backtrack towards the tank hangar that I was just at before, which is gonna introduce the second boss segment of the run, which is the tank.
Huh? Is there somebody there?
Now, in the MGSR community, the tank fight is infamously known to be rather difficult. You know, there's a lot of precision involved with grenade tossing and headshots. You know, granted that if it's resorted to that. But we'll get to that in a minute. Alright, so now I'm up on the first floor again. Meryl's opening up the door. And before I go in, I'm gonna need a SOCOM suppressor to take out some sensors for these lasers that's guarding this door. Because unlike the original game, you could not disable these lasers. You know, you either had to evade them, or if you're doing a glitch category, you could go out of bounds to evade this. But again, in this game, it's simplified by just shooting out these sensors, exclusively added for Twin Snakes. Alright, so now we're here, I'm gonna grab some claymores, which I'm gonna need for this tank encounter coming up right here. Alright, so first thing I'm gonna do, because, you know, the tank's electronic aiming capability, is I'm gonna throw a chaff grenade, which is gonna interrupt, you know, his ability to shoot his main gun from across the canyon. You know, and while it's jamming, I take this time to get closer into position while getting ready to throw a grenade in the turret hole where the gunner is located. Alright, so I got a good toss. Alright, so now I'm gonna detonate the C4 along with 2 claymores, because once you get 3 successful hits on the treads, it will disable the treads to where now the tank's movement speed is now slowed to a crawl, as opposed to going at full speed. Now, in the meantime, I'm gonna throw these stun grenades as best as I can, while at the same time acquiring these chaff grenades that I'm gonna need for later. Alright, so like I said, it's a little finicky trying to get these grenades in. It requires you to stand just in the right placement to get it to go far enough and go in the gunner's lap. Okay, so that one was a little too much. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna conserve my stun grenade count by just doing a headshot with an M9, which does roughly 1/3 of the damage of a full stun grenade impact.
See how you like this?
Alright, so second gunner, rinse and repeat. Just kind of do it again. Alright, so that one was unfortunately short. The one difficulty with this terrain right here is because of all these hills, is that it's a little difficult to line up a precise toss with the stun. Alright, so as you can see there, I was just a little too far away, but now this tank is moving up towards the flatter part of the canyon, which is easier to line up your grenade since there are no inclines to take into consideration. Alright, so I'm gonna try to go over here. Again, I want to take advantage of this flat terrain as much as possible, while trying to avoid his gunfire, if possible. Okay, so unfortunately I couldn't do enough stun grenade damage. So what I'm gonna have to do is take 3 headshots with an M9 as a backup. Although it will cost you some time, but it is fairly safe to do, with little expense to you for your ammo count. Now, it takes about 8 to 10 seconds for every shot to, you know, get the guard to come up from the tank. You know, because stun grenades are ideal, but if you cannot, for some reason, you could just do this as a backup. Okay, so unfortunately, like I said, I did cost a lot of time to this run due to that tank encounter, but there are ways to save some time coming up right here. So normally you have to crawl through this door, or underneath the door to get into the warehouse, but while equipping a chaff grenade and equipping and unequipping it while moving backwards, it allows you to clip through the door unintentionally. And what this does is not only does it provide you a codec skip that you would normally get by crawling underneath, the codec would take about 8 seconds of time away. And although doing that chaff glitch does take a little bit longer than crawling, the amount of time you would save from the codec is easily worth doing the trick. And we do this, you know, we do this twice during the run to save time. Alright, so now after acquiring this Nikita, it's gonna be now the second basement level of the nuclear building, where now we're en route to go to the computer lab where Otacon, the computer engineer in charge of Rex's development, is supposed to be located. But before we even get there, we have a new problem. You know, we're now going into the hallway where the floor is electrified. It's filled with gas. You know, it couldn't get any worse. But fortunately, due to this Nikita, we can disable this, power generator, you know, ever so carefully. Alright, so nice and easy. Alright, and now we have access to the floor. Alright, so pretty similar to the original game, just, you know, MGS2 gives you first-person view as a default, whereas in the original game, it gives you a bird's-eye view with the option of going into first-person for control. Alright, so now we're coming up to the third boss encounter, which is Gray Fox. Normally it's a really difficult encounter for casual players, but there's a unique way of taking him out quickly, which involves a punch-punch-kick technique while having a Nikita equipped. And what this does is it gives you bonus damage on the kick while having it equipped as you do the kick. And in between each punch-punch-kick, I shoot his blade to cause a loop. Now, by doing this, it will basically cause him to reset every time, allowing me to rotate between this punch-punch-kick and then a deflect with 2 punches. Now, the reason why the Nikita is used like this is because when it's equipped on the kick, it does extra damage than intended. Okay, so unfortunately, I made a mistake with that second rotation. But fortunately, I could still try to save this encounter. Alright, so he's gonna hide in this corner, and if I just approach him carefully... Okay. Alright, so like I said, it can't be looped until he's virtually at 0 HP and stamina, although the fight will not end until you trigger the cutscene that precedes punching him from the start. But essentially, if you rotate them cleanly, you can get a rather simple fight from what is normally complicated. You know, due to the fact that you cannot use weapons against Gray Fox, because he will deflect most of them, because it's meant to be an unarmed fight. But due to the careful use of punch, punch, kick with the Nikita, it makes that encounter a lot simpler. Alright, so now we're on our way back up to B1, where the commander's room is located, where we're going to regroup with Meryl after she was just located by some genome soldiers while she's trying to stay in disguise. So we're going to try to regroup with her to see what's going on. Alright, so along the way, you know, along with collecting that chaff grenade, which I'm stockpiling some chaff grenades for a tower climb later in the game, but we're grabbing these stun grenades in addition to that for that purpose. Alright, so we're just gonna knock on this wall, cause Meryl to turn around. You know, since again, she's now disguised as a genome soldier after she was briefly discovered. But in order to get her attention quick, you just simply knock on the wall, it gets her to turn around. And it allows you to proceed with some cutscenes, which now leads you into the fourth boss encounter, which is Psycho Mantis. Okay, so now, just like the original game, you do have to trigger this encounter by staring at Meryl, which is now gonna transition into this cutscene, followed by Psycho Mantis, who is gonna reveal himself. But to start things off, rather than just knocking out Meryl with stun grenades, we're just gonna quickly knock her out with Nikita. You know, it kind of helps speeds things up.
You are a very...
Okay, so now one of the advantages to running this on Emulator is that you can assign your controllers to port 1 and 4, which, like the original game, you had to change your controller from 1 to 2 in order to trick Psycho Mantis from being unable to read your mind. Alright, so after hitting him a few times, we're gonna shoot him with the M9 at his leg. And now the reason for this is not only does it simplify aiming at him, but it's a special weak spot, given if you're trying to go for a big boss run. You know, because it's rather difficult to go for something like a headshot. So, instead what you would do is you just aim for the leg, you know, or the knee, you know, in that general region. And it does significant damage despite being an M9.
Stop! Meryl!
Alright, so just like the first time, we just give Meryl a little whack. And she's out for the count.
It cannot be. No.
Now, the way that this Nikita works is that when Psycho Mantis disappears, he may be invisible, but his hitbox is still present, which allows you to hit him with the Nikita since it has a wide hitbox. Okay. Alright, so a little unfortunate with the ammo count towards the end, but basically, the key things from that fight is to aim for the leg You swing with an Nikita because, again, it has a really wide melee hitbox, which allows you to hit Psycho Mantis even when he turns invisible throughout parts of the encounter. Okay, so now going through this canyon, we're going to be now encountering with these wolves. In the original game, you could evade these rather easily, but in the Twin Snakes, they made their pathing a little more aggressive, you know, and a lot faster. But for simplicity, I just shrank them with the M9 just to put them out of the equation. And then, like with the stun grenade, I'm doing the equip unequip
Snake, what's wrong? I thought you were good with dogs.
manipulation to give me movement speed increase while crawling. It's used quite a bit throughout this run. Okay, so rather than trying to follow Meryl's footsteps, we just simply follow around these walls and then just go right up to her. You know, because even though her footsteps does reveal a safe spot, the mines are not everywhere as you would believe. You know, so as long as you hug the walls and go up to the corner where she's at, you're pretty much safe. Alright, so now Meryl's injured. We're now encountered with the next boss, which is Sniper Wolf. Unfortunately, I do not have the right armament to take her on at this moment, so we'll have to backtrack towards the armory to acquire the PGS-1T, which is the Tranquilizer Sniper Rifle, originally introduced in MGS2, which is a convenient carryover from this remake. Alright, so once again, just clear your way of these wolves. Quick trank will do. Now, in the original game, you would have to acquire the PSG-1, which is the lethal sniper rifle, which is located in the B2 armory. Thankfully, due to the Twin Snakes remake, they not only include the PSG-1T, which is for non-lethal sniping, you know, towards the intent of going for something like Big Boss, or just a no-kill run in general. But not only is the PGS-1T included, it's actually located really close to where the Sniper Wolf is, which is in this room right here. So rather than backtracking all the way towards the armory, which would require, you know, elevator time, going through the warehouse, as well as the canyon, you could just simply backtrack to this room and go right back towards where Psycho Mantis was, which saves quite a bit of time, you know, from due to all the back traveling. You know, so it's one of the benefits of running Twin Snakes is that convenience in the PGS-1T. Alright, so we're back in this area once again. And then before we proceed, we're gonna acquire some ammo before we meet Sniper Wolf, as we're gonna need quite a bit of it. Not only for her encounter, but for the encounters that follow. Alright, so now I'm gonna set up my weapon loadout for Sniper Wolf. Alright, so I'm using all of my potassiums that I acquired from the PGS-1T room, which by doing so stacks your steadiness effect, which is very similar to its function in MGS2. Alright, now Sniper Wolf herself has some RNG in terms of behavior and spawn location, but given the experience, you can predict where she's gonna go, as well as planning up your shots. Alright.
I got her.
Alright, so again, it's not really that difficult of a fight. It could be rather difficult at times just due to, you know, unfortunate RNG, you know, due to spawn placement, irregular patterns with her movement. But for the most part, it's just a shooting contest between you and Sniper Wolf. So now, after we get ourselves captured, this is where the run can deviate. Because there are 2 categories for Twin Snakes, just like the original game. You could choose to surrender to Ocelot here, which would spare your life, while giving up Meryl to Ocelot, which would then give you a standard Otacon ending. But if you choose to resist, as I am currently doing, it will give you a Meryl ending, which, although it is, 3 minutes slower than an Otacon run, it's still a satisfying run, all the same. It does not really change how you play the game, from this encounter onward, but it is an accepted time loss, pending that you are going for a Meryl-based ending. Okay, so now that I've decided to resist, I get thrown in a cell where we're now paired up with 2 characters. One which is Johnny the guard that we met earlier.
Witch. She took my clothes.
As well as the DARPA chief that we believe to be dead. During the early part of the game. But as you can see, he's been dead for quite a lot longer than when we last saw him in the cell. But for the next minute or 2, we're just gonna enjoy, the wisdom of Johnny the guard as he patrols and sneezes, complains about catching a cold from Meryl taking his clothes. But we like Johnny. He's not your everyday kind of soldier. It does make you feel sorry for him due to the fact that he has a cold. He has to watch me. But we love him all the same.
Hey.
And then occasionally when you knock on the wall, he does talk to you in 2 phrases, either as hey, or he'll just politely tell me to shut up in there, will ya? See if we can get him to say it.
Hey.
Oh, Johnny's talkative today.
Hey.
One more try.
Hey. Shut up in there, will ya? Snake, it's showtime. Ocelot wants you.
I guess even every once in a while, Johnny kind of, gets annoyed with us knocking on the wall, and he just kind of politely tells us to be quiet. Alright, so now, because we're doing a Meryl-based ending, we get called into the torture cell once again. As Ocelot kind of gives us some shock therapy, if you would.
Go again?
Just simply resist it for 3 segments each. It's pretty straightforward. Alright, so now once again we're thrown back into the cell, but now, as soon as we get this codec call from the Colonel and Naomi, Otacon will later show up with some helpful items that'll help us escape. Alright, but in the meantime, Johnny's gonna have something happen to him.
Oh, my stomach. Damn it.
Yeah, as you can see, Johnny, like I said, is not your everyday kind of soldier, because he's got the rather sensitive stomach. So as he conveniently leaves to go into the restroom, Otacon is now going to show up while in stealth camouflage to provide us some items to help us escape from this cell. Alright, so here he is, right on cue.
Hey, I'm here. Where?
So now what Otacon's going to provide to us is a ketchup bottle that we're going to use to simulate as fake blood, in addition to another keycard, which is for accessing more doors in the facility,
That's better.
including the one that it takes to actually exit this cell. Alright, so Johnny's back from his restroom break after he had to take a rather quick exit. He now comes back to the cell thinking that I have died with all this not fake blood of ketchup. So, being as concerned as he is, he opens up the door, and being conveniently placed at the door allows you to do an instant grab to a choke. Now, in the original game, you could choke to kill to break his neck, but in Twin Snakes, the developers designed it so that no matter how many times you grab Johnny to choke, you cannot kill him. Because simply what will happen is the minute you get close to killing him, the game just simply lets you drop him while he, passes out unconscious. It doesn't really lose or gain that much time, but it's simply a mechanic that allows you to escape the cell, but without resorting to killing Johnny, and then thus disqualifying your big boss Ron for getting an accidental kill.
Huh? Who's there?
Alright, so now our new mission is to backtrack towards the tower where we encountered Sniper Wolf earlier, which will then lead into the disc 2 content of the run. Alright, so following a few headshots, and then ever so carefully waiting for this guard to turn, we just passed through this canyon. Despite the fact there are now cameras in place, it's just a simple routine to get across. Nothing too crazy. Alright, so now back at the nuclear building, we're gonna clip through this door one more time using that chaff grenade technique. Because, again, every time you do this, the game does not actually realize that you've entered this area.
What was that just now? Huh?
Which then evades a codec call from the colonel. Alright, so as we're backtracking towards these caves, you'll notice that I have this handkerchief equipped as my accessory. And this handkerchief, again provided by Otacon, is a handkerchief that originally belonged to Sniper Wolf with her perfume scent, which, when equipped, allows you to pass through these wolves without them being aggressive to you because it has her scent, which marks you as a friendly. Exclusively used just for these caves. And then once you're done, you can just simply, unequip it. Alright, so kind of returning to where it all began with Sniper Wolf and Meryl. We're now making our way towards the first tower, which is now what would be the beginning of Disc 2. But before I do so, I'm gonna grab this M9 ammo at the top of these stairs, which is gonna be required to get up this tower. Okay. Now that we're on disc 2. Beginning with Communication Tower A. We're gonna start up with a stun grenade at this door, which is gonna conveniently go off as these guards come in from behind. Alright, so right here I'm going to take a quick shot on this guard on floor 5, which gives me a quick knockout rather than being hit. And next comes up floor 9, which is going to spawn 2 guards, which we can carefully shoot. And then while throwing the stun grenade as a safety for any soldiers that are coming up from behind. Alright, and now begins the treacherous stair climb. Now, again, due to the fact that we're using an M9 for this run for Big Boss, this encounter has made it so that one shot is required only to take these guards out, rather than multiple bullets for lethal rounds such as a SOCOM or a FAMAS. Again, and then we just rinse and repeat until we reach the very top, which is going to be coming up right on this floor right here. Alright, so aside from that one knockdown, that was a rather decent Tower A climb. Okay, so now I'm going to equip a rope that I acquired at the beginning of the Tower A climb, which is going to be for this rappelling section coming up right here. Now, in the original game, you were required to have this rope to descend Tower A as Liquid is trying to shoot you. But in Twin Snakes, it allows you to do not only the rope for rappelling, but hanging mode as an option. Although, hanging mode is slower. You know, since acquiring the rope does not take that much time. Because simply you just, you know, follow these steel beams on a diagonal all the way down, which is faster than rappelling. Which would be your intended maneuver. But just descending on the steel beams makes the run go a lot faster. Alright, now comes Tower B, which is going to be leading up towards the next boss encounter, which is the Hind D, piloted by Liquid. But first we have to trigger a cutscene, which is down on floor 7. Which Snake has now discovered that there really is nothing after floor 6. You know, the stairs were kind of blown up, so unfortunately we couldn't go down the stairs as we had liked, so we have to go back up to try to use the elevator, which unfortunately is also not working due to unknown reasons. But thankfully, you know, our sidekick in hand, Otacon, kind of explains the situation while he tries to get the elevator to work. But in the meantime, we're going to now actually climb more stairs, which is going to lead towards the rooftop where Liquid is located, hovering above with the Hind D. Alright, so all these chaff grenades that I stockpiled earlier in the run is used for this segment only, which is this Tower B. You You know, which is to preferably avoid this gunfire coming from these gun cams. Okay, so after climbing up this ladder, we will now be starting the 9D boss encounter, which, in my opinion, is probably one of the most difficult fights in the game to do for a big boss run, because it's rather intimidating, you know, for new runners as well as for casual players. So we're gonna start things off by aiming at this corner, since he starts off the same by being on this side of the tower. And then by following his gunfire, you know, you can basically follow his gunfire to predict where he's gonna show up to do your next Stinger missile shot. So that was actually a rather lucky Hind D. Because for the most part, his flight pattern is predictable, but the second half of the fight is where it can be problematic for RNG due to the fact that as it goes down and then rises up to show up to attack, sometimes he can stay down longer, or he'll descend and then ascend very quickly, which allows for more shots, for more damage, thus resulting in a faster fight, which I did gain some significant time back just due to that good pattern, because other times, Hind D will stay low and then rotate around you, which causes rather significant time loss, but again, it's just a part of the fight. It's, you know, sometimes you get lucky and other times you're just standing there for what seems like an eternity, you know, for Liquid to show up again. Alright, so just like the Ascension, I'm going back down these stairs of Tower B by using these shafts to jam these gun cameras, you know, which are located every 4 floors from each other, but on the 3rd floor, after each gun cam, you could throw a chaff, which lasts long enough to get through those gun cams and then 2 more floors before having to arm the next camera for a chaff. Alright, so now, mysteriously, the elevator is working, even though Otacon previously reported that he could not get the elevator to work. It's like, uh-oh, that can't be good. I mean, the weight limit alarm has gone off in the elevator, but Snake is supposedly the only one in the elevator. Which, to now Otacon's recollection, he now suddenly remembers that there are 4 other stealth suits, which are now in the hands of these genome soldiers, which were hiding. You know, definitely explains why the elevator was heavier than normal. Alright, so now with this shaft, it allows me to pass through these hallways, which are loaded with more gun cameras, which now leads to a second round of Sniper Wolf. Now, just like the original encounter, there are some RNG in regards to her movement pattern as well as her spawn location. But for the most part, it's an executional fight of aiming, while just hoping that you get a good spawn. Now, once again, I'm using a whole stack of Phantasmins, which stack my steadiness, each pill that I use. Alright, so I used this Stinger to acquire her location, despite the fact that she's behind a tree. Alright, so unfortunately I could not end the fight fast enough, which gave Sniper Wolf more opportunity to take cover behind trees, which add towards the game time. You know, but like I said, sometimes you can get lucky, where she starts in the open, whether in movement or if she's crouched already aiming at you. But in this case, she was behind a tree. But for the most part, it was a decent fight. Alright, so now coming up at this blast furnace, which in the original game had a different method of getting through it, so instead, we're gonna drop down while using this chaff grenade. Again, jamming these gun cams that are down here. Gives us quick access to this room. And then straight to the elevator. Because unlike the original game, you know, Twin Snakes has hanging mode, which is a carryover from MGS2, and it's taken quite advantage of in this room and then in Rex's hangar coming up in a bit. Alright, so now the next encounter coming up is going to be the second round of Vulcan Raven, who we previously encountered when he was piloting the tank. However, this time we're going to be fighting him in a different way. You know, as his now new weapon of choice is a minigun, as opposed to the tank. Now, this encounter can be done different ways, but in Twin Snakes, there's a rather interesting way of encountering Raven, which requires the use of the MGS1T. Which will be explained after I get into this room right here. Alright, so once this encounter begins, after I use up all of my remaining Plasmids, I go right to this corner, lay down. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Yeah, unfortunately I was not in the right position, where I was crouched instead of laying down. So once again, we're gonna use all of our remaining Plasmids. And as we lay down, we simply shoot at Raven's head, as he's trying so hard to hit me. And we do this a total of 10 times. Alright, now the way that strategy works is that when you're laying down with a sniper and Vulcan Raven detects you from a distance, although he's an auto-fire, he does not actually hit you. And in addition to that, it gets him stuck to a certain point, which is enough time pending you get all 10 shots consecutively. But unfortunately, since I did not, it required the use of a backup location. Alright, so now we come into Rex's hangar. Now, unlike the original game, Rex's hangar is one fully loaded zone, as opposed to multiple segments in the original game. But also, unlike the original game, there's more guards, which we could just ever so carefully take out with this M9. Okay, and then once all the guards are neutralized, then it'll now give you access to the next part of the hangar, which is reacquiring the PAL card. Because in the game, you know, as Liquid and Ocelot discovered that I'm actually in the hangar, the PAL card gets shot out of my hand. It lands towards the bottom of the hangar, which is now in the possession of a rat. Now, in the original game, this rat has infamously bad RNG as to where it spawns, but in Twin Snakes, you know, it has a constant spawn. You know, but unfortunately, I did not get the drop that I wanted. Yeah, so once again, it's a really finicky drop because you're trying to drop from the top of this hangar to this pole wire here. Alright, so there we go. Now, unlike the original game, you had to figure out where they're at is, but in Twin Snakes, we know that it's in this corner. And then with a careful use of grenade, you can just get the card ready to go. And then as we backtrack towards the control room, where we have to use these PAL keys, this is where the run also separates from the original game as how to change the card. You know, because in the original game, you had to change the temperature of the card by backtracking to the freezer, where Vulcan Raven is, as well as the furnace to change it for heat. But in Twin Snakes, there's a readily conveniently located set of pipes, which is in this hangar, which I will show you. Now, normally you'd have to go down to the hangar and exit and make your way to the freezer, and then stand for approximately 61 seconds for the card to change to cold, and then back travel all the way back to the control room to use it. But in Twin Snakes, you don't have to do any of that. You can just simply travel to this spot right here, going into hanging mode, and then grabbing onto this ledge, there's this cold and hot pipe. And then after shooting it with your gun while having the PAL card equipped, it changes your card's temperature instantly. You know, so therefore by doing this method, which is uniquely exclusive to Twin Snakes, it does not require any back traveling outside of this hangar whatsoever. You know, which from a speedrunning standpoint is rather convenient. You know, because not only does it take the back traveling time of going to the different zones, but it also the 1 minute waiting time to change the card for its temperature. Okay, so now with the cold card used, we're gonna go back to that same pipe area, shoot the hot pipe this time to now change it to heat, which will now be the final lock in order to what we would believe to be disarming the nuclear system. You know, since the system uses 3 keys off of one card, but it's all temperature based. So once again, going back to this pipe room, and now shooting the hot pipe. Now, the fact that I'm doing it in this way, as opposed to the intended way of back traveling towards the furnace and the freezer, by dropping down after getting the hot card, you get the codex in this hangar rather than the elevator as intended. You know, so unfortunately, even with these pipes, it does not bypass these codecs. But it's still worth it just for the simple fact that it has the hot and the cold pipes in the same hangar, so there's no back traveling required. Okay, so now after activating all 3 keys, you know, Master Miller, now revealing himself to us as actually Liquid, who we've been talking to this entire time, traps us in, since we're no longer of use to him, since we now arm the system that we were trying to disarm. You know, but thankfully do a quick call to Otacon. He can bail us out of a jam. You know, quickly unlocks this door, which then begins, you know, the final boss fight segments, which starts with Rex. Alright, so carefully aiming at this radar dish. You can remain stationary as long as you can evade the plasma laser, as well as missiles.
Now, in front of you, I can finally die. After Zanzibar land, I was taken from the battle, neither truly alive nor truly dead. An undying shadow in a world of light. But soon it will finally end.
It's no good. I can't.
Okay, so now begins the second round of Rex, where now the mouth is open, rather than aiming for the radar dish.
There you!
You know, just simply aim at his head, while evading gunfire and plasma lasers, just like before. Alright, so now comes the final boss fight, which is now a one-on-one duel with Liquid. Alright, so I'm going to focus on this fight, and I'll try to explain some of the manipulations involved for this fight.
Is that? Hurry!
Alright, so for the most part, the way that fight works is that in the beginning, Liquid has this, what's referred to as like as a bait and switch defensive mechanic, which means he kind of provokes you into attacking so he can counterattack you, but you can catch him during movement, which allows you to punch him 2 to 3 times. And then once you do this up until near 60% of health, which now you can carefully lock him into a corner, which is where that radar dish was. And in Extreme, if you hit him more than 3 times, it bounces him back. It does not allow him to fall on the floor, which can allow you to pin him into a corner and repeatedly hit him for fast damage. And once you do so, you can continue to loop him if, you know, the fight is smooth. But if not, he may escape, as it did. And you can just simply repeat the method until he goes down.
Snake, it started. Get in. Fire that machine gun with the weapon button. Shoot it.
Alright, so now comes the final segment, which is the escape route. Nothing too crazy here, it's just, you know, it's pretty much a staged encounter while blowing up some barrels to help escape.
Here they come!
And the reason why we blow up the barrels is not only is it faster to take them out, but it does not kill them. You know, because it's the only way to get by without killing them in order to satisfy the big boss requirement for no kills.
You'll never make it. Snake, straight those guards.
Alright, and that finalizes the tunnel. You know, so now, after these credits roll, this is now the end of my run of Twin Snakes on Extreme, with the intent of Big Boss, but due to the unfortunate circumstances, Big Boss was not achieved. But I just want to thank the MGSR community for introducing me to speedrunning, just for Metal Gear games in general. It's a lot of helpful runners, a lot of helpful staff and guides out there for people interested in speedrunning. But under that, I mean, it's a fun game. You know, it's definitely different from the original. But, you know, for the most part, you know, given some good luck, world record best time for an Otacon ending, which is approximately 59 minutes, so it's just under an hour, which is currently held on console by Aurelian, and on emulator, it's currently held by Wall Guy, which is approximately 59 minutes and 8 seconds. So emulator and console do run similar to each other, with the minor difference in loading. But likewise, you know, the game functions the same way, the tricks still work the same way, and, you know, it's a fun game. You know, I enjoy running it, and, you know, to whoever is reviewing this, you know, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and I hope that you may take this run into consideration, despite the fact that, yes, it is indeed on an emulator. You know, but all the same, you know, I appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best with putting together, you know, AGDQ 2020, you know, for cancer prevention and research. You know, it's a very worthy cause, and, you know, I appreciate your organization running this event twice a year. So for the time being, you know, I'll just let these credits play out to establish a final game time, although officially, this would end at the final crash, which would be 1:10:47, which an in-game timer would be around, like, 1 minute, 1:04. But once the credits finish out, then I would estimate this run finished out at, you know, 1 minute and 9 seconds, I would say. So I was slightly overestimate due to unfortunate deaths to Vulcan Raven and the Hanger. But given if things go smoothly, the run can be done in, you know, 1 minutes and 1 hours and 7 minutes, if not less, for our Meryl ending.
You mustn't allow yourself to be chained to fate, to be ruled by your genes. Humans can choose the type of life they want to live. Snake, whether you've been programmed or not isn't important. The important thing is that you choose life. And then live.
Yes, sir. The entire unit was wiped out. Yes. Yes, sir. Thanks to the vaccine. Yes, those two are still alive. The Vector? Yes, sir. Fox Die should become activated soon. Right on schedule. Yes, sir. I recovered all of Rex's dummy warhead data. No, there are no other records. They've all been deleted from the base's computer. No, sir. My cover is intact. Nobody knows who I really am. Yes, the DARPA chief knew my identity, but he's been disposed of. Yes. Yes. Liquid is dead. The inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the inferior one. Of course, the other one thinks so too. Yes, sir. I agree completely. It takes a well-balanced individual such as yourself to rule the world. Yes. Yes, sir. No, sir. No one knows that you were the third one, Solidus. What should I do about the woman? Yes, sir. I understand. The surveillance will continue. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. President.
Okay, and time's gonna be coming up soon. Now, so my final time, which is 109.13 with 2 continues, it does exceed the estimate by over 2 minutes, which is, definitely explained through the mistakes that happened. But once again, I appreciate your time and consideration for Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes for AGDQ 2020. Because once again, it's an honor to be able to submit to this. I hope that in your review you may consider this run for an admission. But until then, thank you so much for your time, and have a good day.